Welcome back to the Pushing Through Loss podcast, where we share stories, honor resilience, and embrace strength. I am Kalila Green Siciliano, and it is my honor to begin the journey with you.
This morning, I wanted to go into more of my own story. I feel like I've talked to so many amazing people, and you really haven't heard from me specifically. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to just delve into a little bit more of the aftermath and how I've gotten to where I am now, because it's a very different story than where I was just over 2 years ago. In August of 2022, things were going along perfectly fine, like every other pregnancy I had had. This was my 5th pregnancy. There was no reason for me to think that it would go any differently than the way that they already had. And I know people who have gone through infertility challenges, people have gone through miscarriages and stillbirths, have all of those complications in their head every time they find out that they're pregnant. But I had a very blissful experience, and I really don't think that I appreciated it then as much as I do now. So at the end of August, when I lost the baby, it was one of those where I really needed to start from ground zero to try and figure out how to climb my way up to even just being status quo as I was before I'd lost the baby, but hopefully to try and learn something and do something to better myself, but also those around me. And that's where all of these different healing modalities came in. The first thing I did was obviously cry. I let it out because I've realized that in trying to suppress any sadness, any grief, any anger, any frustration, I was only making the situation worse, and I was taking it out on my kids and my husband. And my kids, I was perfectly fine with letting them know that it's okay to show emotion. I think a lot of times we get stuck in that thought of, I have to be strong for them. And while that's true, being strong means so many different things. Being strong means showing how you have emotions, showing how you work through those emotions. It's not just being stoic. And my daughter, really, who at the time was 11, really, I think, learned the most in understanding her confidence around showing her emotions, her confidence in saying that it's okay to feel all these feelings, that emotions are just energy. It's not anything positive or negative. And if we hold it in, that's where the negativity starts to play in. So yes, I cried a lot. And then I felt like I needed to do something. I felt like the idea of creating this human being had been taken away so suddenly that I needed to create. And I know other people who have felt the same way. People who aren't so creative in their personal everyday to day lives, and people who are. And at that point, I sat in front of the computer for what felt like hours. I just had this outpouring of ideas. I was doing research and I was seeing what helped other people. And I created the Pregnancy Loss Grief Workbook because I felt like if I needed to write and I needed to color and I needed to express my ways, or I needed to express how I was feeling in certain ways, and what I was finding to be helpful wasn't actually out there yet, I thought, why not create it? I definitely have that mentality in a lot of things in my life. And this was one that just the feeling of helping others and creating something positive just took over. And I researched and I talked to friends and I looked into myself to see what helped. And that's really how the Pregnancy Loss Grief Workbook was born. And from there, the toolkit, I remember somebody had sent me something from an organization in the Northeast that had a few items also to help make people feel like somebody was there for them, even if they had known no one else who had ever been through a miscarriage or pregnancy loss. And the items that were in there, at least for me, did not hit the mark. They felt almost triggering in a way. And I really didn't want to put the things into the pregnancy loss toolkit that I felt would trigger other people. And I didn't want anything that had to do with pregnancy. I didn't want anything to have to do with getting pregnant again, because I don't know where people come from. And I don't know if this was their first time trying or their last time trying. And so I wanted items that really just made the person feel like I was giving them a hug from long distance, or that a friend was giving them a hug from long distance if they couldn't be there for them. And I curated things like chocolate and a mug, slippers, an eye mask, a candle, just things that I really felt like in times of grief, it didn't matter if it was a pregnancy loss or any sort of loss, that these were items I would appreciate. And I hope that others have felt the same way. I hope that when you've received a toolkit from anybody, that you just feel that sense of love and sense of almost helplessness, that you can't really do anything to make the person feel better except just be there for them and hold space. So after those two things were created, I felt like I still needed more. I still felt like I could help in different ways, and I really just didn't know how. And I started going into this idea behind releasing energy, because I know that for me, like I said before, crying and letting it out and showing my anger and showing my frustration and not bottling it up was one of the most helpful things. But a lot of times we get into this idea of, I'm just going to deal with it later. I don't want to think about it right now, which is helpful when you're in a situation that maybe you can't scream and cry in. But when you go every day, every week, every month, and you're still bottling up all those emotions, it doesn't serve you. Finding a healthy way to let those things out is really something that I delve passionately into. And that's how I got into the energy work and the idea of using sound and frequency, using Reiki, using crystal singing bowls, being able to just have that energy move through you with the help of a different modality. And so I started looking into Reiki lessons. That was definitely a huge thing. And I am almost done with the 3rd level of certification. And then from there, working with sound and frequency, this program that a friend of mine got me into, I started using actually January 1st of this year, 2024. And I've used it almost every day, not just for myself, for my kids, for my husband, for friends, for anybody who is interested in looking into how sound and frequency can help balance your emotions, balance your inner energies, really look at going into a cellular level of this whole idea of frequency and quantum physics and how it affects us, because we're all made up of energy. Everything around us is energy. And so if you can slightly alter the frequency of that energy, it tends to balance things out without you even really having to do a whole heck of a lot. So that was extremely helpful. And from there, just looking into the idea of bringing people together. And that's really why I created this podcast. I've interviewed some incredible people, both women and men, who have gone through loss. And I've realized that while each of us have our own individual experiences, we are all so similar in our grief. We are also similar in how we want to feel connected, how we want to feel community, how we want to feel our pain and push through it. I hope that with each and every episode, you listening can find that comfort, can find that community. I hope that you've reached out to any of the guests that I've had. They've been willing to speak to each of the people out there. They want to connect on Facebook. You can go back into the show notes or listen to any of the episodes. and I've tried to include all of their information to reach out because they do have a lot of really great insight. And by all means, please reach out to me. If you do know someone that is going through a loss, I'm always here. My email is available, kbethgreen@gmail.com. You can always go to my website. On there, I have links for the toolkit, for the workbook, for my empathy ring that I created, and as well the frequency, the AO scan frequencies. I didn't really come into this morning with a plan of what I wanted to say, but I hope that this has been helpful. And I look forward to the next year of really looking into what helps people not just survive on the other side of loss, but thrive. I always say there's a reason we're still here. And in that, I can only control myself. I can only control my own thoughts, my own speech, and my own action. So what am I going to do with that to really push through the grief and push through the loss and get to the other side and be able to thrive and be able to help others? Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions on any of the things that I provide to help, please reach out. And please don't hesitate to send it to somebody else who might need it.
Thank you for joining me today on Pushing Through Loss. I hope this episode has provided support, understanding, and a sense of community. Remember, you are not alone on your journey, and you have the strength to face the challenges that come your way. If you found value in today's conversation, please leave me a review and consider sharing it with others who may benefit. Together, we can help each other heal and activate our inner strength warriors. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations, and until next time, you got this.